Hi, everyone. Bear with us. We'll be starting in about 30 seconds. Okay. Hi, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to the 4th annual Beth Nahrain Writers of Mesopotamia conference. We're glad to have everyone here. My name is Christina Oraha. I am happy to be your moderator today, and I'm a proud Chaldean theological student, and I have a deep love for our history and storytelling. So it's something that runs in the family, I think, because my dad also happens to be an author writing about the Chaldean heritage. And I guess you can say this passion is somewhat genetic. So even though we're meeting virtually, there's something so meaningful about gathering as a community to celebrate our roots, our culture, and the authors who keep these precious stories alive, one book at a time. So we might be miles apart here, but our shared heritage keeps us closely connected. So thank you for joining us today. Get your coffee, get comfortable, and let's begin the celebration of our Chaldean voices, faith, and history. So first, we're going to start with the wonderful Weam Namou, who is an award-winning author, filmmaker, cultural advocate who brings life to the stories of the Chaldean community by documenting them. She has authored more than 20 books and is the writer and director of 2 films. She's also the recipient of the prestigious Eric Hoffer Award, which honors excellence and innovation in independent publishing, which is a big accomplishment. And her storytelling is rooted in her life. Born in Baghdad and raised in the U.S., she's committed to sharing heritage, culture, and her voice. And she manages all this while wearing a beautiful smile anytime you meet her. Please join me in welcoming Weam Namou.
Wow, Christina, that was so beautiful. Thank you for welcoming me. And I actually, listening to your story, would love to learn more. So hopefully in our next presentation, you will be able to present and share more about your story. So today I am speaking in 2 different phases. And the reason is one, I guess I'm going to the ancient times where I am sharing stories that I discovered recently about some very iconic Chaldeans that really their stories I feel like were buried, except for Maria Teresa Esmar, which was introduced over 10 years ago. But some of the other stories I recently stumbled upon, and I just felt like it's so important to reshare them in a more modern version because they were written so long ago. And in some of the cases, they were even mislabeled. So we will start off with Reverend Ilyas al-Musali. So this is the new version that I wrote. And one of my aims is to make these books accessible to younger people, although to everybody, but especially to younger people, so that it's not overwhelming to read them. And plus, they have an easier language than what it was originally written in, which, believe it or not, it was written in 1668. So Ilyas al-Musali was the first Middle Easterner to travel to the Americas, the colonial Spanish Americas, documenting his trip from 1668 to 1683. He was a Chaldean priest from Mosul whose family was called Amuda, but some authors think that maybe it was more Amuna because that is more of a familiar name, but that in the translation or in the handwriting from Arabic to English, that it was miswritten. So Reverend Anton Rabat, a highly regarded Jesuit scholar, was an authority on Eastern Christianity. He was the one that discovered the manuscript in the library of the Jacobite Orthodox Bishop Library in Aleppo. He was so fascinated by its content, so he recommended that it gets published, and it was published in Al-Mashriq in 1905. And he translated it as well. And it was two documents, one that was mostly documenting his journey and coming across all these different Native American tribes, as well as sitting with the Pope, as well as sitting with the Queen and other royalty. So part of it was that. And the other part was the historical aspect of that area. And Rabat felt like the historical aspect was not so necessary because it was information that people can get from anywhere. So his, I guess, the travelogue was the more important part that they documented. So, so he started in Aleppo in 1668. Reverend Ilyas embarked upon a journey and pilgrimage to Jerusalem, where he traveled to Baghdad, then to Iskenderun, which is in the northern end of Syrian coast of the Mediterranean. Then by sea, he went to Venice, France, Spain, Portugal, and Sicily, back to Spain, and from Cadiz, again by sea, to America. His journey was sanctioned by both the Spanish monarchy and by notables of the court, who by his own account made ready his provisions, whatever he needed. So without their support, it really would have been difficult for him to make this journey, because what you will see is when you are going in this journey with him, he had all these letters where people opened doors for him. He was invited to, by Pope Clement IX. He was giving Mass in Chaldean during that time. So imagine from that period, he was introducing people, the Americas, to the Chaldeans. So there's no real mention about the reason why he did go. But there's different ideas of what the Pope might have wanted him to see the situation for the Christians in the Americas. And also the other reason would have been to try to get support for the Chaldeans that were in Baghdad, in Iraq. So as I mentioned, this is a version. There's different books about him. I think one of them, which, it's mislabeled, where it's called An Arab's Journey to Colonial Spanish Americas. So this is an inaccurate identity, and as we see most recently, we really care. And as Christina mentioned, we're very proud Chaldeans. I think part of that pride is because knowing, our name is really where the generation and future generations need to continue our name. So in rewriting it, I made sure that he has the correct label, which is he was a Chaldean priest journey to the New World in the 1600s. And one of the other things that I did in here that was different during this time, the same time that I was writing the book, we were visiting the Dominican Republic, and we had the chance to go and visit the old city by a tourist who told us so much about that part of the area, which I included some of the history that wasn't included in the travelogue. I included because I feel like it is important for us to know what was going on during that period when he was traveling. Okay, so the next book that I also rewrote and condensed, because this is Maria Teresa Esmar, a Chaldean woman's story during the 1800s. Of course, most people by now know her memoir was Memoirs of a Babylonian Princess, which was written in two parts. And that's quite a bit to read, although I have read her work several times. And Maria Theresa Esmar, the way she was introduced to me is by Emily Porter, who was in England. And she also, when she came across her story, felt like, what is this? You know, this woman was born in 1804 in Tilkef. She's a Chaldean. She traveled to Europe and the Middle East on her own. Who is this woman that, you know, she knew so little about, this is how I felt as well. And so she translated her book from English, because it was originally published in 1844 in English. And then Emily Porter translated it to Arabic and published it to make her more known. And I found out from Emily Porter about her because I attended in 2012, I attended a talk that Emily gave at Shenandoah that was sponsored by the Chaldean Cultural Center. And once I discovered Maria Theresa Esmar, I too fell in love with her. And when I read her book, you know, one of the things that when you read about these iconic people is that their first major thing was not that they were writers. They were legacy keepers. They were documenting our history. They were wanting for this not to be lost. So it's very important to continue their stories. And again, this is a shorter version that I wrote that I'm hoping that especially the youths would read. But her memoir is available even for free, although I have the original. I think everybody should have her original book. It's such an honor for her. Her book was sponsored by Queen Victoria. So imagine how much respected she was during that time, especially when she was living in England. So having the original book, it's just with the original book, she goes into a lot of details about her life. She lived for 6 months with the Bedouins. And she just it's just amazing kind of like following her and her lifestyle and the things that she saw and the people that she came across. It's also kind of also sad that in some sense there was oppression from the Ottoman from as far back as that. You see that sometimes people think that what has occurred to the Chaldeans is more recent or in 2014 because of ISIS, but it actually goes before that. There was a lot of similar situations that were happening. And then this one right here, I guess he's the most modern in the sense, and Father Joseph Naim. And this is a very special story for me. I am writing an article about him for the Chaldean News that should be published in December. But the other reason it's special is because I've connected to his great nephew who has the same name. So his nephew named his son Joseph Naim, and we have connected to, you know, fill in some dots and for me to understand. He ended up passing away in Switzerland. His story is very, very interesting. By the way, some of these people, people from Iraq, like he introduced me to this particular book that was called Shall This Nation Die? Now, that book, Shall This Nation Die, if you want to read it, it's also available for free. I really like to get my own copies and study them. But the thing about this is it's available for free. Half of this book is about his life. And then the other half, he interviews people. He interviews about 10 Chaldeans and asks them about their experience. And I actually, even his great nephew said he had such a hard time reading this book because he talks about the genocide of 1915 and he was imprisoned. And then he was tortured and he was able to escape, luckily, but it happened to him several times. He lost family members to the genocide. And he served to help serve actually the prisoners there. I don't know if Christina, do you have my slide that you can just, okay. If you have that, you can just go through the pictures. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from his book. And which, like I said, a lot of people who I recommend this book to said it was very difficult to read some of the things that were happening to him. And that's why when I condensed it, I also kind of softened it up, because I guess even though he said in there he really wanted the Chaldeans and for people to know what happened, but some of it is very graphic, so I kind of like smoothed that part out. Okay. And then you can, like I said, once you do have it up, you can just go through it. I'm just going to read a little portion of what he wrote. Oh, that's okay. Oh, yes. And if not, that's okay. I'm just going to read, if you find it, that's fine. But if, okay. I'm just going to read this excerpt from his work, and then we can move on with the questions. And I just want to add one thing, that he ended up coming to the United States. I have newspaper clippings in the new version, which has actually, well, let me show, you know what? You don't need to do that. I'm just going to show this right here. Here he is wearing Bedouin clothes. So one of his friends, who also helps his family escape, had him wear Bedouin clothes, and had him hold a horse. And this is one of the ways that he was able to escape the genocide. And then in here, there's also, I found clippings, what he did after he was able to come to the United States. He gave a lot of talks all over the United States about the Chaldeans. It says, Chaldean priest who escaped horrors of Turkish massacre tells a story to aid his people. Chaldean priest at St. Gabriel's tomorrow. So he continued to give so many talks. I asked his great nephew why he ended up, and this is of him in his older years. And I asked him, why did he end up in Switzerland? This is what we're trying to figure out, is how he ended up there. So we'll see if we can figure. The family is looking through documentation to kind of get an idea of what had actually happened. Okay. And so this is what he wrote in his preface. Several works have already appeared on the atrocities and massacres perpetrated by the Turks in Armenia and Syria. Eyewitnesses and victim of these cruelties, I come in my turn to present my testimony. It is my heartfelt wish to reveal to the public yet one more prey of the monster of Anatolia, the brute history that fell upon us, the destruction, felony, murder, and massacre. So the beast whose life has been prolonged by 50 years through. So he goes on. And I'm telling you, even though it's hard to read this, but whether it's Reverend, whether it's Maria Teresa Asmar, whether it's Reverend Ilyas al-Musali, or whether it's Joseph Naim, when you read their stories, one thing that you get out of it is the necessity for us to continue writing our stories and sharing our heritage. And that is why I am so proud of this conference, where I feel like the speakers here and the previous speakers, this is exactly what they're doing. This is exactly what these individuals wanted us to do. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay? Want to make sure I'm not muted. Thank you, Yam. That was beautiful. Do have a quick question for you, if you don't mind answering, and that is, so regarding, like, you have so many works that you've worked on and so many different ideas and so many different topics. When you do sit down to write, do you write what comes first, like the story you want to tell or the message you like to share?
I will have to say the story. I think if I'm trying to tell the message, it's harder to be objective. And I think then you kind of start falling in the, I think everybody, I don't care what anybody says, everybody's biased. Okay. You can't help but because we're all human. So you're biased the moment that when you choose the story and the angle you want. So that in itself is okay. So that's the angle. So of course you're going to be researching in that section.
For sure.
Outside of that, it's so important to try to stay committed to the story so that we're not trying to flip anything or distort history. I think that's where the line comes. So sometimes if you're trying to tell the message, you might end up leaning in a direction that you don't want. However, having said that, there are messages in my stories, and the message is really just preserving history and just being as truthful and as clear about it as possible. I just think that our heritage is just incredible. Uh, my authors and my agents and all my Western literary world were more in love with my background because I didn't know it. They knew it better than I did. And it was shameful back then. And so it's like our duty to just continue our stories.
It's your beautiful background is what contributes to your beautiful stories and how they end up flourishing at the end. So I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. That's an excellent question that you asked.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. And one more, if you don't mind answering. Is there like a particular story or a character that you've written about that continues to stay with you even after you've written about them that maybe constantly comes into your mind or that you share a connection with specifically?
I think my biggest connection is with Maria Teresa Esmar. And the reason is she was so detailed that I was like, okay. And during the time I met her, I was working on a memoir. So for her to be that candid back then, we're not really in our culture right now, as you see, even in the Middle East in general, there's not a lot of memoirs. So for her to kind of take ownership of her story and to reveal herself as much as she did takes a lot of courage. But one of the reasons I was also very influenced, it's also very rare for a woman to be telling stories. Usually the men have more of the time and the situation. I mean, I have a family, so I know it's crazy trying to juggle things. And then the other reason it influences me, sometimes when I see what's happened to our community, I realize I want people to know the history that it didn't just start in the 20th century it didn't start in 1915. It started even in 1815. Before that, there's all these periods that it was systematically happening. I think this is very important. And Maria was very direct in saying that people need to know about our history and people that need to help our people. And something about her voice requesting that, I think stays in my heart at least. I think anybody that would read her book would feel the same way.
It's beautiful. That's a great reflection.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing that. Okay. I think we're ready to move on. Until your second segment, we
Oh, yes. Okay, I won't go too far then.
Because we'll have more questions for you then.
I won't go to the mall or anything.
No, thank you for sharing your beautiful insight.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we have our next presenter as part of this conference. I'm honored to introduce Father John Jwad, who's associate pastor of St. John the Apostle Chaldean Catholic Church in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. He was born in Michigan in 1996, and he's been dedicated to the church since a very young age. He served as an altar boy, which even I remember. He's very special to me as well. And he learned to chant Arabic from a very, very young age, Aramaic, I should say, at a very young age. He was ordained in November 2023 and is focused on faith, community building, and preserving the Chaldean traditions, as he always has, even at a young age. Under his leadership alone, and with the help of some parishioners and local community members, the Calgary Chaldean community celebrated the purchase and consecration of their own church building in June of this year, a milestone that was made possible through his dedication and his vision. Please join me in welcoming Father John Jwad.
Thank you, Christina. It's an honor to be with all of you this morning. And it truly makes me so proud to see that our community is filled with many beautiful writers, orators, historians who are dedicated to preserving our history, our culture, and our language. It truly is very, very important, especially in this day and age. First, I would like to point out, after listening to Weam and the many different stories that she shared, is the great role of the Chaldean church in preserving history. Many of the stories that she shared were of priests who went and traveled and journeyed many times on religious missions, but at the same time, they also went to Great Lakes to preserve the history, their stories, their journeys, and the communities that they meet. So I think it's very beautiful to always remember how much the church has contributed in the past and how much the church should and is contributing now in the future to the preservation of our language, of our history, and community upbuilding in general, keeping the community united together so that together as one community we can preserve who we are as a people and also teach others more about our culture and our faith. My story begins, as you said, in Michigan. I was born in 1996, and I was very, very much inspired by many of the clergy in the Metro Detroit area, especially His Excellency Bishop Ibrahim. And at a very young age, I wanted to learn more about our language. I began to be an altar boy. Then, little by little, with the help of Shamash Khairi Fumia, was able to read and write Aramaic, and then began to chant in the High Mass, a very similar story to many of our priests today. And afterwards, let's say from high school on, I began to be very involved in many different social circles in the community, especially in the media. At a very young age, I was able to co-host many different radio shows in the Chaldean community, especially with the Chaldean Voice Radio with Shawqi Kunja, the John Zaya Oram Network and their show that was daily at the time, and Wali Jadan MEA, and many other different platforms that helped me to know more about different community members and also to present much information, news, and history about our people. So that got me more involved and it gave me a greater love for the community. And then afterwards, in 2016, I entered into the seminary and I finished my bachelor's degree in philosophy. Afterwards, I went to a mission year in Lebanon and I lived at Harissa at the seminary of St. John the Beloved. And I served there for 1 year. And then afterwards came to Toronto, where my bishop was, Martyr Bawai Soro, who was with us in this conference. And in these years of formation, I finished my master's degree in theology at St. Philip Neri Oratory and Seminary. And after being ordained, a couple of days ago was my 2nd year anniversary as a priest, I was assigned to Calgary, Alberta. And the story, which the main reason I am here to present, is about the Chaldean community in Calgary. And Dr. Roy and many others have visited our community here in Calgary. And many people are interested because mostly we always talk about the large Chaldean community in Detroit, in San Diego, in Australia, throughout Europe. But many times the Chaldean communities that are in Canada are forgotten. And as our beloved writer, Jacob Bacall, will mention, that many of the first pioneers who left Iraq, many of them came to Canada and Mexico. And there was a point early on that there were more Chaldean immigrants here in Canada and in Mexico than the community in Detroit. But to go back to my point, and to the point that His Excellency Bishop Brahim always makes, the difference between the Chaldean communities in Detroit and in comparison to Mexico and other places that have been forgotten is that the church went to Detroit at the request of the people. And because of the church presence in Detroit, that was one of the main reasons that the community grew, and why other communities that didn't request a priest or build the church, that their community declined and was later on forgotten. So that kind of ties into our story here in Calgary, that many of the pioneers who came very late in comparison to Detroit and other places came here in maybe the early 70s. I know Bishop Bawai has mentioned to me that I think in the late 70s or early 80s that he has came here to Calgary as a priest and has celebrated Mass for over 100 Chaldeans and Assyrians who were here in Calgary. So the story of the Chaldean community in Calgary is actually much older than we think, but a lot of them left. A lot of them didn't stay because of the small community, because of the cold weather. It's already snowing here. And because of the lack of opportunity in comparison to other big cities such as Toronto, Windsor, and then later on in the US. And so as Jacob has written in his book, many people left Canada and went to the US because of the Ford plant, because of Ford giving $5 a day as a wage, which was something very generous and a very big deal. So many people left Canada, many Chaldeans among them, and went to Detroit. And for that reason, many of those small communities in Ontario have been forgotten and no longer exist. But the Chaldean community in Calgary, many of them did end up staying. And there was another big wave of immigration in the 90s, especially when the wars and the different catastrophes that have been happening throughout Iraq's history, but especially in the 90s when there was a lot of killing, kidnappings, a lot of violence in the land, that many people came here to Calgary because there were some families who were already settled here, and there were also some people who were studying here, and so they were able to sponsor many of their families. That was the, let's say, the second wave of the people in Calgary. And then the third and final wave, the biggest wave of the Chaldeans who came to Calgary, was after 2014. So as we know, ISIS came in and just terrorized all of our villages, especially in the north. And many of those people left and were barely able to escape with just the clothes on their backs. And so after escaping, many of them were refugees in Turkey and Lebanon. And after visiting all the many families that are here, they really are horror stories of what they endured and what they had to go through and how they had to live for years at a time. Many of them escaped in the mountains. Many of them went days and weeks without food or water or proper housing. Just trying to cross the borders so that hopefully they can be accepted by the UN as refugees for other countries. And many of them with their families, with toddlers, with children, going through these very, very dangerous mountainous routes and until finally getting to a refugee camp and waiting for a mu'amala, as they say, waiting for citizenship papers to get to another country. And then finally getting here to Canada, it's a very, very long journey. And especially for those who stopped and waited in Turkey, many of them were suffering for many years because of the persecution from their neighbors. They weren't even allowed to gather in one place. Many of the refugees that were in Turkey especially, the government would purposely put them in different cities, far away from each other, so that they couldn't commune and be together. And so for this reason, Bishop Ramzi Garmo and many other clergy had to travel hours and hours at a time, especially on Christmas and Easter, just to get the community together. And then they would need permits and go through the much fear of gathering the community together in these cities that many of them had much great hate for Christians. And so finally coming here to Calgary, many of these people were very relieved, but at the same time, there was no church. So they were at the same time relieved, but also disappointed that there wasn't a very big community connection. There wasn't a very big community circle. There wasn't something that gathered the people. There wasn't not even just a church, not even a social club, nothing. And so in comparison to back home in Iraq, a very social community that's always united, close to the church, usually in walking distance to the church. It was a very big adjustment and transition. But then after years, through God's providence, I was assigned here. And on the day of my ordination, about 1,300 people were gathered together. And many of them gave us many gifts to me and my family. And we decided that rather than keeping these gifts, it would be better to put them towards building a church, because it would be hard for me to serve without a church. And so after my ordination, I received $200,000 from all the gifts and put those towards my first assignment in Calgary. And it was truly a great blessing that in a very short time we were able to find a church. And in that short time, God sent us many messages, sent us many good people who were able to help us in this great task, because Calgary is a very big city, about 1.5 million people, and it's growing, and it's very, very hard to find a place of worship because there's so many immigrants and communities coming here. So we found it by chance. I went to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is 6 hours north of here by car. I went and took the place of another priest in Mass. And while I was there, they have a very big, beautiful church that was purchased by Bishop Brahim in 2010. And I asked the parish council members, how did you guys get a hold of such a beautiful church? We're barely able to find anything for sale in Calgary to buy for our parish. And one of the parishioners said, what we did, Father, is we wrote letters of intent to purchase, and we sent these letters all over around the city to everyone. So I really liked the idea. So I came back and I also wrote letters saying, we are a new immigrant community. We're looking for a church. Is anyone interested in selling their building, their property? And I sent it to every church, every synagogue, every mosque in the whole entire city. And 2 weeks later, we received an email saying that the Prince of Faith Lutheran community is an aging community, and they are willing to share and also sell their church, their property with us. And so within just a couple months, the terms were agreed on, and we were able to purchase the church. And in June of this year, June 18th, we were blessed with the presence of His Excellency Bishop Robert Georgis to come and consecrate the church, with the presence of His Excellency Mar Ibrahim, who was the bishop who gave the community their first pastor in 2007. So it was a very historic moment for Bishop Ibrahim to be present in this parish that he began, that he founded when he was the apostolic visitor back in 2007. And also, as you can see, Bishop Ramzi Garmo, who we talked about, many of the refugees that are our parishioners, Bishop Ramzi used to serve while he was in Turkey. We also had the honor of His Excellency Bishop Toma Meram, Bishop of Urmia, Iran, to be with us, and many other priests. And we had over 150 people from Detroit, 50 people from San Diego, some people from Australia. We had over 50, 60 people from Saskatoon and many other different cities across Canada. It truly was a blessing to have so many guests with us on this great and historic day of the opening of the consecration of the first Chaldean Catholic Church in Alberta, in the whole province of Alberta. And to piggyback on that note, we also have a very similar community in Edmonton, which is a 3-hour drive from here. We have about 100 Chaldean Catholic families who don't have a priest and who don't have a church. So I'm actually today, after this conference, I'll be going there to do Mass for them. I try at least once a month to go there and do Mass for them. And thinking about all the stories that Weam talked about, the many things, the many stories and history that Bishop Bawai and Jacob Bacall have written about, I see history in the making here. All these little small communities that are new, little by little trying to create, to build a church, to unite together. And I see that one day they will also be part of the history of the Chaldean church, of the Chaldean people, which is one of the reasons why I try as much as I can. I try to make it my responsibility to document every single piece of history, to document all the different steps that these communities are going through while I'm here serving them, because I know one day people like Weam and Jacob Bacall will want to make books and tell these stories of these small communities throughout the world. And so I want to make sure that the information is preserved and there so that it is easier for different historians to write in the future about our people. And I also want to talk about in the last couple minutes how important it is for me as a priest to try to preserve the culture, to preserve the language, especially in the hearts of the youth. As a priest, I believe that my responsibility, that my role in the community is not just the faith. Of course, that is the most important and first among many roles. But I also believe that our language and the preservation of our history and our liturgy enhance our faith. There are many people today, unfortunately, that believe that the faith and our history and our language should be separated or even contradictory. But I believe the opposite. I believe that our language, our history, our taqsa, our liturgy, they are all like steps that lead us towards God, that then they enhance our faith, they make it greater, that I can understand my Chaldean Catholic faith much more when I know my history. I can understand the prayers of the Chaldean Catholic Church much more when I understand the language and am able to pray and read about our history, read our prayers, read our liturgy in the original text that it was written in. You have that upper hand in being able to read these prayers in the eyes, in the vocabulary, and even in the spirit, because many of them are poetic, many of them are filled with different meanings and different symbolisms, even in the words. And so to be able to pray these prayers and these liturgies in the original Aramaic and Chaldean, it gives you a encouragement, it gives you a greater power, it gives you a greater strength to be able to love God more in a very specific and a very unique way. And we see Pope Leo is very much encouraging the preservation of the Eastern rites. In the beginning of his pontificate, we see that he's already written and spoken many times about the Eastern churches. And so I believe that as a community, we should remind ourselves that our history, our church, is a treasure chest filled with many, many treasures that we have not only the responsibility, but we have the privilege of being able to use these treasures in our lives, not just our normal lives, but even our spiritual life, and to be able to apply them to future generations, to give them, to pass them on to future generations. And I think it's very important, whether it's by writing books, by offering resources to our people, and even just teaching the language. And I know many people are saying, oh, the church should do more, we should have more classes, but I also would like to say that it's also the role and the responsibility of parents. Many parents today know Chaldean, but they are not teaching their children Chaldean, which is a very big shame. And it's very sad, because that's the one thing that will keep the language going. The church can have 100 classes, schools can have classes, but if they are not keeping up with it and trying to actually live their language, actually use their language in their daily life, it will be forgotten. So my message in sharing this story of the people of Calgary, and also to all Chaldeans around the world, is we have to seriously, intentionally try to keep our language and our history alive, especially us who are the people that this culture is our own culture. There are many other people who from outside believe our culture is a treasure, but it is first and foremost our responsibility as Chaldean people to try to keep our traditions, culture and history and language alive. And I saw that the people get very happy with the preservation of our language and of our history, especially in today's world. Here in Calgary, with our catechism program, we also teach the language to young elementary school children, and they love it, and their families love it even more. And I have, because I came here to Calgary and I didn't have many deacons, I also took most of the summer off to be able to teach many 12, 13, 14-year-old boys how to be shemashe, how to read and write Chaldean, how to serve the Mass in both English and Chaldean. And they love it. The families love it, the children love it, and it shows that it's very easy to spark this little fire of love for our language, for our history, and for our church. So as a clergyman, as a community member, I want to encourage as much as possible our people and even others to learn our language, to keep it alive. And I especially want to thank people like Roy, who are going out of their way and putting so much effort into trying to preserve our history and our language. Father Michael Bazzi, since I was a very young child, watching all of his videos, his classes that he would record about our history and our language, he is a very great linguist who taught at college, at Cuyamaca College for many years, the language. And he was among one of the many priests who put in my heart that love for the Chaldean church. So the love of a priest can go a long way. The love of a teacher, a writer, a historian can go a long way in the life of many other people. So I would like to close by thanking all of you for the many great achievements, contributions that you have all given and have contributed to our community's history, language, and culture. And I encourage you to continue on and know that there are many people like myself who are encouraged by your work and are encouraged and learn more about our history because of the many sacrifices and efforts that you have given to the community. May God bless you all. And this conference is, I would like to say, almost like a family affair, because many of the people that are speaking in this conference are very dear to my heart, especially Bishop Bawai, Father Michael Bazzi, Jacob Bacall, Roy Gessford, all very great people who I not only call friends, but family, and who have all, each in their own way, personally and uniquely contributed to the history of our people. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay? Thank you, Father John. That was beautiful. And you speak with so much passion and so eloquently. So thank you for sharing your journey. It's beautiful. We do have a couple of questions if you have a few minutes to answer them based on your share, what you shared. One of the questions we have from one of our viewers is, how do we know that Aramaic is the exact language that Jesus spoke?
So we speak, the Chaldean community today speaks Neo-Aramaic, which is a lahja, which is a dialect of the exact language that our Lord and Savior spoke. And Father Michael Bazzi, I know, will have much more information about that. But as any language, especially an ancient language, the language changes, and over time, syllables, different ways, different words are pronounced in different ways. And so even when I look at the Surath, the modern dialect that we speak, and look at the Gushma, the original Aramaic, Syriac, Eastern Syriac language that we see, there are differences. But the language, much of the vocabulary, the grammar, the basics of the language are the same.
Thank you. That was a great explanation. Another question, one more. As a young priest, how do you balance preserving the Chaldean culture and traditions, such as the Aramaic chanting and the traditions that go along with our church, and just in general? How do you balance that and also engaging with your congregation there in Calgary? How do you balance both?
So I think it's very important to make a distinction from the beginning that, yes, our first and most prominent and most important role as priests is the faith. In no way is the Chaldean church a church that is based only on culture, that only accepts a certain race, or is only focused on the preservation and propaganda of our culture and who we are. No. As a church, and as myself as a priest, my first and foremost duty and role in life is the salvation of souls, is working and sacrificing my whole life for the salvation of souls. But as I said, within that journey, within that work, there is also opportunities for us to bring in the culture, to bring in the language and our liturgy, to be able to show the faith in an easier way to our people. Because our forefathers, through the language and the history and the taqsa, they were able to give us these tools that help us dig into our faith in a way that is unique for us. In a very similar way, if, Christina, I gave you glasses that are prescribed for you by a doctor, those glasses are personal for you, unique to your eyes, to be able to help you to see better. So our Chaldean liturgy, our prayers, our theology, our spirituality, those are glasses that God gave to us, that our forefathers made for us to be able to see him in a better way, to be able to see him more clear and love him more and be closer to him in a very beautiful way. So I do not believe they conflict. And actually, I believe that our faith helps us grow closer to God. But as whoever asked the question, there must be a balance. And I think it must be distinct and clear from the beginning that our faith is the most important thing in our ministry, in our lives. But at the same time, we can also highlight our culture and our language because they help us be stronger in our faith.
That was a great answer. It's you must have a heart. It must be difficult to balance with the time that you have in a day. You know, everyone always says, "We wish there were more hours in the day." We're very grateful to you for doing what you are doing to preserve our culture. And I know for a fact that many kids in the young generation, after mine and yours, really do rely upon it. They do a lot of research. They find your name. They know what they see all the works that you're doing in order to preserve souls and our salvation of souls, and also to serve our community as well. So your hard work does not go unnoticed. So thank you. Thank you for being part of this conference today. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we heard some great words from Weam and Father John Jwad, and we will now be hearing from someone that is special to me to introduce, and it's a real pleasure and a special honor to introduce Jacob Bacall, who is an author and historian and who also happens to be my father. Through his work with Arcadia Publishing, he's written 3 remarkable books that have documented and celebrated our culture in the community's story, which the 3 titles are Chaldeans in Detroit, Chaldean Iraqi American Association of Michigan, and the Chaldean Catholic Church, which is his latest work. His books preserve faith, history, and the resilience of Chaldean people, offering a lasting record for future generations. Please join me in welcoming Jacob Bacall.
Very nice, and I'm grateful to you. First, as you know, you are my favorite, as I always repeatedly say, politely or not. But we have a lot in common, and that makes you very special to me. I have also to admit, for those who don't know, it was an honor for me to be introduced by your youngest daughter, Carmen, at our last event at the book signing of Chaldean Catholic Church, which took place at Shenandoah Country Club a few months ago. So again, thank you. To comment, first of all, I'm grateful to be part of this 4th annual anniversary of, or conference, I should say, of Beth Nahrain. I think this is a great event, and I am grateful to, of course, Weam Namou, and we should not ignore how the role of our beloved brother Roy, who's really a great follower on everything that goes on, continue to follow up with things and continue to keep things alive. So I'm grateful to his effort, grateful to his friendship as well. I was very much touched by the first Weam's enriching us with some Chaldeans who have really went out of their way to enrich our history and preserve it, of course. And starting with the Maria Teresa Esbar, which I shared a lot of really love for her writing. And I remember like 15 years ago, and I thought would be worth mentioning. I always cared to know what she did and trying to get her books, even though it was not available in Arabic. So I was able to get the original books that was published in 1844. And I bought this 2 volumes from auction place in England. And I think for the benefit of viewers, these are the original 2 books which I purchased in auction, and by no means were very cheap. They were very expensive. Nevertheless, preserving the history, this is the original books. This was printed in 1844, volume 1, volume 2. So I thought it would be worth mentioning, and I preserve it in the safe in my office. So, this is to tell you how much I do care, and that was about 15 years ago, maybe. So I am grateful to this, bringing her history, and of course, she did mention also the event that took place in 2012, which was also enlightening. I was also very very enlightened by what Father John has mentioned about geographical area of Canada and how he's trying tirelessly to reach out to everyone and trying to cover his geographical territories. I think beyond belief, that is traveling 6 hours on one side, 4 hours on the other side, and he has not missed much in Detroit. Every time he is in Detroit, I always see him in funeral, weddings. So as I have all along I've known him, he is very active and truly he's a gem. to our community and enriching our faith and encouraging the younger generation to keep the faith and continue to learn the language. That's a tougher challenge because if you don't have a school, it will be tough to preserve that language. So we'll pass on. I'm grateful to both Father John and Weam. Now, talking about the book, I do miss my loving friend, dear friend, Bawai Soro, who was the co-author of this book, Chaldean Catholic Church, and I wish he was here. I was fortunate and honored for him to join me. As I have mentioned, it was a truly work of love, and I got to know him a lot better through the work because we've been good friends, but never at work. So now I think we are kind of encouraged to go ahead and push, maybe do something else that will enrich our culture. I'm not quite sure it's going to be about religion, but I'm not quite sure what else going to be. So I'm grateful to be part and be co-author with him. So thank you, Bawai, if you are listening. Of course, my deep regards, and I wish you were here. So to talk about this book, truly the book itself was not about us, myself, and my beloved friend Bawai, about collecting images or restoring dates. It's much more connecting the community to their history. And rightfully so, as Father John mentioned, if it was not for the church who really mothered the immigrants and kept under their umbrella, things could have been scattered. We could have been just like Mexico. Without a church, they're all scattered, and there's no true Chaldean community as a community, other than names that in history, and hardly you see anybody speaking Aramaic anymore, because the original immigrants passed away, and those who are still the children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, they don't speak the language at all, other than they carry the name, and even their name is being modified to have the Mexican spelling and pronunciation. So we are fortunate, of course, even though the early immigrants to the United States, they did come early on, around 1900, 1910, 12, to Detroit specifically, and rightfully so. Father John has mentioned, the original community by size was not in the United States, nor it wasn't specifically in Detroit, was in Canada, Fort Ham, Canada. And of course, the initiative of this, I would say, great businessman and Henry Ford came up with this idea of $5 a day. At the time, the average pay was $2.35 and 9 hours a day. He cut it to 8 hours, 6 days, and double the pay. Simply, there were reasons behind it that they couldn't keep their employees working on the at the time on their plans at the time. So what happened? He revolutionized car booming and building cars was not doing as well. With him coming with this idea, really changed the auto industry, all not just in the United States, but all over the world, and put Detroit on the map. Did put Detroit on the map, and that was the reason for our community in Canada. Within a matter of 6 months, I would say the idea was introduced in January 5th, 1914. Within 6 months, 80% of our community in Fort Ham, Canada, moved to Michigan, and specifically Detroit. Why? Because this was the double the pay, and communities start getting larger and larger. Even though the majority did not work on the plan at the time, but there were many other businesses that they joined, opened, like bars, I would say, bars, stores, in addition to ancillary businesses that supported the wave of immigrants coming from all over the world to Detroit. Was not the Chaldean. Chaldean was maybe formed the slightest and the smallest percentage among all. So within a year and a half, from being 300,000 in population, jumped to be closer to 2 million people. That was a big jump. So that helped the community to grow in Michigan. And of course, many attempts at the time were taken between 1914 to 1948, when the first church was built. And that's, of course, we went through World War I, and we went through depression in the United States around 1930, and of course World War II as well. All that passed through before we, the community here in Michigan, were able to purchase their first church and establish. That was, and they purchased in January 15, 1948. And since then, of course, the community has prospered, and did very well. And of course, from time to time, immigration rules were not as easy as it became after in 1965. Of course, now it's a bit has changed slightly after Trump took over. After he became president, he put more restriction. But at the time, it was a lot harder. In 1965, the rules were relaxed and more Chaldeans were able to come in waves. And 1973 is another wave. Then 1980, after the Iraq-Iran war, 1990, 2003 was the I would say the Chaldean presence in Iraq was almost like was the beginning of an end for the Chaldean community in Iraq. So it's the wave of immigrants who left Iraq was the biggest and the most effective that the Christian community, specifically the Chaldeans, has suffered greatly as a result of the fall of Saddam. And now, from being 1.5 million, now we are down to less than, it was like published less than 90 days ago, that we are down to 123,000. So to talk about the book and touch on the chapters. So truly what encouraged us to write the book, I thought was, the lack of information that to be found regarding our history of churches, not just in the United States. I'm talking about specifically in Michigan, but also in other areas such as California and Canada. So the book was to preserve the history of our church and of course eparchies all over the North America, that including we did Michigan, specifically Detroit, served as a mother, and started with the mother church, which was named Mother of God in 1948. That was the beginning of first church in Michigan. Even though the first church was established in 1904 in Chicago for the small community that immigrated from Lake Ormia in Iran, and they were Assyrian, but they were Catholic in faith. So they did establish the first church in 1904 under the name of Saint Ephraim. Ephraim is a saint from the 4th century who really praised the Immaculate Mother Mary and talked here the multiple books and about her. So, but that church did not grow as much as rapid as and big as the one in Detroit, were multiplied in size and spread to build multiple churches. From then, I think 1948 moved to 1973 we built the second church, and that was that was in Detroit. Then the third one in Oak Park, which is Mar Edday, and continued to grow over the years. Now we have 12 churches under St. Thomas Eparchy, and of course we have, I think, 11 churches in California, which is St. Peter Eparchy, and we have a Mar Edday. I think they have also a similar number of churches spread all over Canada. So why the book, it covered the churches and covered what else that was important for the readers or for to be kept as historical in this book. Among many other things, we have put 3 chapters, one for each eparchy. As I mentioned, St. Thomas, St. Peter, and Mar Edday. We also talked about history of who are the Chaldeans from the Sumerian times, Babylonian, Chaldeans, Assyrians, all the way down to the birth of Christ. And then we covered the birth of Christ of course till 1960, till I would say 632, which is the it was about Islam as a religion, where start coming into the area of the Arab Peninsula and continue to come and with the I think year 636, when Iraq was known as an area between 2 rivers, and Mesopotamia was become like under the rule of Islam, and things start changing, and you could see the 65 to 70% of people spoke Aramaic. That has continued to evolve and change, and as that continued to spread, within a matter of 100 years, even though the Chaldeans grew all over the world, reached China, and at one time we had over 80 bishops all over the world. Things start shrinking at I think it was when in 1258, when the Mongol took over, things start really taking the downturn for the Chaldeans then, and the church start shrinking because of the brutality of the wave of Mongols and many other factions that came after them. So that was chapter 4. I think we also mentioned about Chaldean in history. We talked about how the Chaldeans suffered all over the wherever they were after the I would say 1958 revolution. The wave of Chaldeans start going elsewhere, less in Europe than the United States. We did see the Christians were marginalized because of instability and the way that things were, the change of government, coups and revolutions. The things did not go right for non-Muslim, and specifically the Christian. So they did suffer, and they end up mostly start finding, leaving the country to look for more stable places to live and raise their children. Certainly, United States was one of the top destination, but it was not as easy for them to apply and get a visa and come here. Another chapter was about the historical visit of the Pope to Iraq, which was never happened in the history since the introduction of Christianity to Iraq, which started like we were the first people to in Mesopotamia, the first people to out of Roman Empire to be Christian. So Mesopotamia and Babylonians, Chaldeans had mentioned multiple times in the Bible, and their role as building the first church in Qatai Safun, that is in about 30 kilometers south of Baghdad, and how that evolved to go ahead and spread until maybe the 429, 430, when Nestorius, who was a bishop of Istanbul, today was Constantinople at the time, has came up with this his own theory of that Jesus Christ, he's a human and he's a God at the same time. That kind of many of our people followed his theory. Till this day, we have a considerable amount of I would say Christian, mostly Assyrian, who still believe in that. So that kind of put a dent on our being one church, one people, and that kind of created a rift. Today, there are many efforts were put through activists. Marbawi Soro will take the lead, and God rest his soul, Bishop Sarah Jamu also tried very hard to reunite those two churches. It was not as fruitful, but I think we are much closer than ever before. Maybe someday we'll be united. Nevertheless, going back to this historical visit by the Pope, he did trying to energize and trying to keep the faith and the people to stay in Iraq. And this is thousands of years history for a Christian to stay to hold onto their homeland and continue for Christianity to prosper in that spot of historical geographical area where always to be close to Bethlehem and close to the Palestine. Iraq was considered to be geographically very important area for the believers and spread the word of Christianity around. A later time, I do know that the Christianity has demised and shrink, but our Chaldean community now is becoming, I think, less active in many areas of government. They are marginalized, and we do hope things to change with the new government. But nevertheless, it's a pity to say that we are the beginning of an end for the Chaldeans in Iraq is very obvious. So we hope things will change, and we do hope the Chaldeans will again be able to preserve their churches and maybe revive the language in northern Iraq, if not in Baghdad.
Thank you. That was great reflection on your most recent book and all the different chapters. We had a little snafu with the presentation we had going, so sorry about that. But nonetheless, the community is grateful for your contributions. And we do have a question if you have a few minutes to answer. What motivated your writing more recently on the extent of the Chaldean Catholic Church? What encouraged you? What inspired you to write about that specific topic in your most latest publication?
Well, for one, there's many booklets and books written here and there, but none of them truly track the history of the first church, the history of the consecration of churches, whether in Michigan or other states like California or even Chicago, and including even Canada, to mention. So we do not have, unfortunately, we do not have archive at our church to preserve the historical records of what goes on. So I had many challenges when I wrote this book, and even the first book, to find a picture of the first church. Big challenge. Couldn't find it. Couldn't find. Nobody has it. So I think by way of accident we came across a picture that was somewhat black and white, was not great quality, and I want to put it in my first book, because this is mentioning the church is like it falls in the heart of our community presence in the United States. So I had to hire commission an artist to draw that picture and put it in the book, because it was not usable, and the publisher did not accept it because of the quality. Another thing that most of these churches don't have any. I wish the initiative was taken by the diocese for every church to write a booklet about the history of that church, when it was established, why, the population, the size of the church, and most important, consecration of each church, which is like a birth of a person. So the lack of information and the preservation of important events were not documented. That certainly pushed me to write about it and preserve it for next generation. I don't know if our now at the present time maybe is not appreciated as much, because people maybe, I don't know if it's lack of reading or what it is, but maybe it's not appreciated by those who lived some of the events that we saw in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But for future generation and those who are non-Chaldean, that will be very, I think, important and historical for the future.
Thank you. I think you're doing I hope I'm not biased, but I think you're doing a good job of documenting it all. And even your granddaughters, my girls, are excited about it, and I feel like they share your work. So other people of all age groups are learning about our Chaldean culture and our heritage and the traditions. Another question, looking ahead, do you have any new projects or topics that you're excited to explore or maybe write about in the future? I think people are enjoying your writing, so they're looking for your next topic might be.
So, Christine, there's so many good writers out there. They just have to make the time and dedication to write and preserve history. I have to mention all the books I have written, all is for the royalties, the profit, all is going to community non-profit organizations. So really, I take a joy in writing about things that I love, and certainly writing about my community is full in my heart. But most important, I would like to see other Chaldeans to write about, not just about specifically one subject, their experience in life being a Chaldean. And it doesn't have to be, and you don't have to be a writer to write a book, to be honest with you. I always believe a good reader can be a writer, and they could do a very good job. And you do not have to be a professor, you don't have to be a journalist to write a book. You share your experience with the people around you, your community, your people of your society, wherever you live. And that is eventually it become like truly something other will treasure and will enjoy and endure.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. It's something that nobody can ever take that away. It's in writing, it's there to share. And I love that future generations will continue to have access to it and use it in how they teach their children or just learn about it.
You also asked me if I want to have any plans for it. You know what? I don't have any, as you know. You probably suffered the most during this book because you were my technical assistant, and you scanning all.
It was an honor. It was an honor. Yeah.
And that was a lot of work. And dealing with someone like Arcadia Publishing, which was they are very rigid about their rules and regulations, and you cannot write more than 75 words for each half a page, and the DPI for each image has to be minimum 300 DPI. So and you have to have the right to publish you have permission to publish any image that you have. You must have written permission to publish it. That was not easy. So I enjoyed publishing books through them because they make our life easier, because they're available on Amazon, available in many bookstores in your area. But I am thinking about maybe if I am fully retired, I might think about writing about some, but for the time being, certainly I have no plans to write a book. But I don't know if it's the last book.
I don't think it's your last one, but we'll see. I'm here to help if you need me.
Thank you.
But you're a great author, and I think that the topics you choose to write about are all topics we can all learn from. What is it?
You are biased.
I am not biased. I've heard it from other people too. But no, it's great, and thank you for preserving our culture and documenting history for this generation and for many generations to come.
Thank you to all for making this happen.
Of course. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so for our next speaker in this beautiful conference, we are giving the floor to Roy Gessford, who is an author, educator, and founder of Let in the Light Publishing. He holds a master's degree in interfaith action and has dedicated a lot of his time and a lot of his work to preserving the Chaldean Aramaic language, which is the ancient language of Jesus Christ. With Father Michael Bazzi, he also co-authored books like Preserving the Chaldean Aramaic Language and The Life of the Tilkep Naya, which he will be focusing on today. Before publishing his work, he spent his time as a tennis coach and bringing the same patience and passion that he has for teaching into everything he does today. Please join me in welcoming Roy Gessford.
Hello, Christina, can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. And how are we doing on the slide presentation? Is that available?
You know, we are having some technical difficulties on that. The files are too large to upload, and that's what the issue is.
That's okay. Can you still hear and see me okay?
Yes, perfectly fine.
Okay, great. I do have a power presentation that's in front of me, and I'll just walk everyone through it.
Okay. I'm not sure if there's a way you can upload it on your end, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, this will be just fine. Father Michael is going to take the questions on Life of Tilkep Naya.
Okay.
I don't pretend to have visited the village. And of course, many people, including some of the authors here, your dad included, know the village life much better than I do. And the goal is to record for the next generation what village life in Tilkep was like. And actually, when I was in Detroit last, I met some young Chaldeans who had gone and visited the village. So it is possible to visit, but there was a time period, especially in between the time of Father Michael's two books. One is called The Life of Tilkep Naya. Does that show up okay?
Yes, we can see that perfectly fine. Actually, that's a great option instead of having the presentation, if that works for you.
Yeah, well, there's also, it's in Arabic as well. It's a trilingual book. And what makes it unique is Father Michael wrote in Aramaic as well. And not many books these days are written in modern Aramaic. So thank you, Father Michael, for doing this. And to understand why this book was written, it's probably pretty important to mention Father Michael's first work. And before I get going too far, just so you were on the same path here, this talk will be in 3 parts. We'll go over the life of Tilkep Naya, this book, and then as usual, I'll give a writing tip, and then we'll kind of go over some travels that I've been on and how the world is receiving the Chaldeans. So with this book here, Father Michael wanted to record for the current generation what life in Tilkep. Now, this is an important thing to think about here. Tilkep is the name of a village. It's about 10 miles from Mosul, Iraq. So Mosul is a large city in Iraq near Nineveh historically. So these are biblical terms as well as modern terms. And the village is called Tilkepe. The people from the village are called Tilkepnaye. That's a general term, and the female would be Tilkepnaithe. So this is the language of Jesus, the language of the prophets, the language of Nebuchadnezzar, and it's Aramaic would be where Tilkepe comes from. And in Father Michael's first book, his master's thesis, just called Tilkepe, which is really has a lot of census data in it. And Father Michael mentions a lot of relevant facts from almost a historical and scholarly perspective. There is a genealogy in that, which all villagers love to learn about because it traces their own roots back to the village and where they came from. Whereas that Tilkepe is mostly about the village, life of Tilkepnaye is mostly about the village life, the villagers, the people, what made the village of Tilkepe special. And one of the things here is the name, because Tille means hill, Kepe means stone. So hill of stones, literally in the back, let's see if it shows up here. Well, in the background on the regular cover, the original cover in 1969 was Tilkepe. This one was 2022. You have a cemetery. So it literally means hill of stones, meaning a cemetery. The Chaldeans who'd been in the village for quite a few centuries buried their ancestors there. And when the demographics of the village started to change, so did the name. And Islam and Arabic became more prominent, the name of the village was changed to Tilkaif. Well, that actually, there's no P in Aramaic, and it means, well, the F means laughter or pleasantness. So we went from hill of, stone, Kepe, which is Peter's name, the rock, meaning cemetery, to hill of laughter or pleasantness, which did not go over super well with all the locals. And then the other thing to know about life in the village is the liturgical cycle of the Catholic Chaldean Church. And there's 10 cycles to it, and it ranges between 2 and 8 weeks. But in this village life, where the church is very prominent, much of the villager's life, and of course this book is by a Chaldean priest looking back at it, went through the church. And so the way Father Michael organized the book is a month-by-month synopsis of the events within the village and what the villagers did. So starting in December, obviously the largest festival or feast would have been Christmas. And you had many meals being cooked, you had church services, midnight masses, and a wonderful time in the village preserving and recording and celebrating the life of Jesus and his birth. In January would be Epiphany, and in Father Michael's book you can see one of the things that he does, it's so sweet, is he does give tips to preserve the Aramaic language. So here he will have the vowels or the consonants. There are 22 consonants within the language. And so Father Michael does a good job of teaching the language as he writes the book. He's a world-renowned Aramaic teacher and preserver of Chaldean culture as well as priest. And it's important to realize that because he reiterates these things, people learn. February, these are our winter months, it is the same season, it's the Northern Hemisphere, is Ba'utha, or atonement. And so for those familiar with those terms, that's where we're heading. March, April, May, you're getting into spring, and the great feast of Lent, which would have taken place in the church. There's a wonderful photo here of some of the women in traditional Chaldean garb, and I was fortunate enough to be in an event at the Chaldean Cultural Center a few years ago, and there was a woman wearing traditional village garb. It looked like silk. It was just gorgeous. And then the men, often wore, well, when they were in the fields, they would wear maybe like headdresses or turbans, but certainly slacks and overcoats and button-down shirts, very respectful, and especially during April, which would be the largest feast of the year, which would have been Easter. Now, after Easter, you get into harvest, and this is a pretty rural village. One of the things that makes this unique is that although they had to come to this village maybe around the 17th century or earlier, there was not much water. It was pretty dry, but the Chaldeans, being very resourceful, were able to find water and grow crops. So they have melons and cucumbers, and as the weather heats up, then you end up with the wife, preparing the meal for the man as he goes out to work the harvest in the field. And so the families had their own crops. And along with that, one of the local villagers are the animals. Father Michael has a section, the cow is a blessing to the home. So all the homes had cows, and that would allow, obviously, production of dairy products. There were sheep, goats, and then fowl. Some of the hunting and the things that would go on were not constricted to the field. You would also have the birds. And there was, in the fields as well, they would use a millstone. And I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of a millstone, but in the book of Matthew, there's a reference to a millstone around a neck. Christina, hopefully, does that show up how large a millstone is with the man sitting on it? Are you able to see that, Christina? Well, when you talk about a millstone being hung around your neck, that's a pretty large metaphor. And so I appreciate that very much. In July, you have the Feast of St. Thomas. Most people in the West aren't aware that the disciple Thomas did go east along with Mark.
Roy, I just wanted to let you know that we can see it.
Oh, great.
She had to step away from her desk, but we can see it.
Okay. Well, I also wanted to show, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm going to show the vendor as well. But the important thing of the geography of Telkepe, and it's helpful to know, you can see here, the roofs are all flat. So when the weather got hot, the people would go on top of the roof at night. And you have entire communities developing. The homes are close together, and people could move to the different roofs. And so you had this, and Weam, I think your volume is still on. You have the community taking place on the roof during the heat of the summer. And there was, heading into August and September, you have fall, you have school starting, you have the boys and girls attending classes simultaneously. Historically in the village, they were separate, but equal opportunity and education for both as time wore on. And then, you have things, this simple picture here of the gas vendor. And, he would supply the gas at maybe some of the factories, because there were factories in Telkepe as well for the tahini or the gypsum. And communication traveled between the villages by these independent salesmen, whether it was somebody selling ice or gas. That was also how news would go from village to village. So the calendar year, I just provided a sketch of what life was like for those in the village life in northern Iraq, specifically Telkepe. But Father Michael also mentions in his appendix, he has some wisdoms, hakimthas, that are so beautiful. These are ancient proverbs. In the Bible, we read about Solomon having ancient proverbs, but I think quite a few of those were borrowed from the Chaldeans, and he puts them in three languages, Arabic, Aramaic, and English. A few of them would be listen, but speak little. A person cannot give more than he has. The foundation of wisdom is the fear of God. There's a poem on beans. Of course, everyone knows the potency of beans, and this simple poem tells of the ups and downs of consuming too much beans in a very sweet way, and then a family folk song that almost every Tilkep Naithe is aware of. And it has to do with the resolution of a conflict between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. Of course, the church is involved and it's resolved harmoniously. So very grateful for that. And again, for Father Michael's work. We have this in a paperback. This is the paperback. Again, it's in 3 languages. We also have it in a hardback edition that is English only. For those of you that are interested in learning more about it, you can go to our website, letinthelightpublishing.com. We are having a flash sale this weekend, coincidentally. Both books are $29.99, and then you get the 15% off if you order through us. We're also available on every major distributor, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Okay, let's go to a writing tip. 2025 writing tip. And let's start by reviewing some of the tips from previous years. So in 2022, our inaugural event, the thought was to keep a journal. In my case, it's a gratitude journal. And it's one way to just start the writing process. This is what I went through today. In 2023, we have the idea of when you're writing in paragraph form to keep it simple. We called it the receptacle or trash can approach. You describe the lid, the body, and the bottom. That's a classic 3-structure paragraph. If you want to spend 3 sentences on the body and make it a 5-sentence paragraph, that's fine. But some structure in your writing can be very helpful. Last year, we were so grateful to Dr. Jason Overfelt to host us at Oakland University. 2023 was at the Chaldean Cultural Center, and thanks to Dr. Adid Miri. But this idea of avoiding certain words that you use in English when you speak it, but you don't use them when you write it. They're called dead words. Words like it or thing. Yes, they have a purpose, but when you get writing, you want to be a little more descriptive. And so for this year, the writing tip here is to, if you can, do your best, determine your audience in advance. So somebody like my mom, she recently wrote her memoir, and she decided she really wanted to keep it and publish it within the family. So she was able to tell more stories than she would have to the general public. Other people, especially Chaldeans, they may be an expert in certain areas and use terminology that are specific to those areas. And so you're dealing with just a segment of experts, or maybe just those within your church. You can write for the larger population, but as you move forward, if your editors are aware of who your audience is, they can help you tremendously in writing a good book for either the public or to be published and becoming a published author. Father John mentioned we're very family-like right now, which is true, and we are always looking to expand the family. So if you have written a book that relates to Mesopotamia and its heritage, its culture, how it relates to where you are living today, please feel free to share it with us here at Beth Nahrain, either Weam or myself, and we would be happy to consider you as being part of the conference. One of the things that I do, along with publishing books and teaching, is some public speaking, and I do travels every year. And after the Beth Nahrain conference in last year's event, I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico on the train. So this is kind of a hold on to your horses. There were actually donkeys and she donkeys and horses in Tilkepe as well. So if there's someone streaming in from the village there, we've got nice trains here in North America. And this will be a little bit of that journey, mostly for people to understand where Chaldeans and Aramaic people are receptive in the United States and what the response is. Many people are just finding out for the first time, what? This language is still alive? Because the books say, well, neither the people nor the speakers. And obviously at this conference, I'm really the only non-native Aramaic speaker. And so, yes, it's alive and well, and we're so grateful for the many contributions. And I went down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and was very well received. And they said, well, there's a petroglyph park here. It's called Petroglyph National Monument. And they had these writings from the native tribes that go like 5,000 or 6,000 years back. So I thought to myself, wow, people can relate to Chaldean and Aramaic from a variety of different perspectives, but one of them certainly is a literary writing archaeological perspective, because they are evident in this country that go back quite a bit. After speaking in Albuquerque, I went to Santa Fe, Taos, New Mexico. Beautiful group up there, so receptive. Santa Fe, the oldest capital in the United States. Matter of fact, it was the capital of 3 kingdoms. It was would have been a native capital, the Spanish capital, and a U.S. state capital. And it's also the highest altitude-wise of any of the United States. So large native population there, large bilingual population. Anytime I find those two, I find receptive people to Chaldeans, because the language, the native concept, they carry over between the people, and they just love hearing about the most ancient civilization in mankind, the history of southern Iraq. So after Santa Fe, I was fortunate enough to get on the train again and went to Flagstaff, Arizona, lovely group, and more petroglyphs. I went to Paint Canyon. And at Paint Canyon, there's beautiful waterfalls, and on one of the walls there in the canyon, some ancient petroglyphs, which I was not aware of these before I went to these locations. So very grateful. Down to Sedona next. It was interesting to be in Arizona again, because when I was in Scottsdale and Phoenix, there were a lot of Chaldeans, and they reached out. We all had a great time, very hospitable, that Eastern hospitality, so grateful for. But in Sedona and Flagstaff, there weren't any Chaldeans. I called around, who knows of any? Well, there may be one. No, turns out he only drives there every once a month or something like that. But Sedona is a very unique place in America. The rock formation, there's one called Cathedral Rock that is just beautiful. And then there's the Chapel of the Holy Cross built into a mountain. You have a sanctuary, a church there. And actually, within that sanctuary, they have a bookstore, and they're thinking of carrying our books on Aramaic. It's a large tourist spot in Sedona, and at the bookstore, they're considering carrying our books, which we're very grateful for. That would be wonderful. But Sedona, very special place. After Sedona, I was fortunate enough to be invited by Weam to the red carpet event for pomegranates. And this was a very special thing. I had read the book, and usually, the movies aren't as good as the books. And in this case, they were equal. They were both wonderful. I got to meet some of the cast. My folks were there. Very precious time. And of course, it was a moment for Weam as Iraq's first Iraqi-American writer and director to shine a little bit. And to see these 12 women in full garb descend from, I think, mostly Detroit area and just kind of take LA by storm was a very precious moment. So congratulations to Weam on that achievement. Just south of Los Angeles, Hollywood, is Carlsbad, California. Very special friend there who I met at a Christianity for Africa event. And I was sitting next to her we were dining at the same table, and she said, "What do you do?" And I started to try to explain to her. Most people don't really, understand. It's a little esoteric. And she said, "Wait a second. Aramaic is the language of Jesus. You're going to learn that in El Cajon." Carlsbad is in North County, San Diego. I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, I'd like to do that. I studied languages at UCLA, and I'm good at languages, and I think I could learn them." I said, "Well, class starts next week." One of the busiest women I know, she rearranged her schedule completely. She said, "I'm going to make it down there." We carpooled every week. It made me now there was another non-Chaldean in the class. And so I take my hat off to Janet. She had not heard the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic talk before. So I went ahead and hosted it in Carlsbad, near where she lives. Her mom was able to attend. A lot of people in the community. Elena Scheidler was there. She is a wonderful in Spanish. She's large with the Spanish community in San Diego. So Just an opportunity to share in multiple, LA, San Diego being very multicultural, a number of different ways there. After that, on to Klamath Falls, Oregon, where I currently am. It was so nice I had to come back. And what did I find? Not only a great crowd of wonderful thinkers ready for Chaldean Aramaic, but more petroglyphs. Petroglyph Point, the Modoc Indians were here. I went to the museum the other day. There was a shoe that said was 9,800 years old. 9,800 years old from the Modoc tribe here in Oregon. I thought, geez, I wonder if there's a shoe in Iraq that was older. So I communicated with some friends. I get the Chaldean flag going. I'm not Chaldean, but I support their history. And he said, well, at the Iraqi museum, we had leggings that went back older than the shoe, but not the actual shoe. So Roy, maybe for once in the United States, you've outdone Southern Iraq. So congratulations to Klamath Falls in having a shoe that dates back that far. After Klamath, I went up to Montana, talk about another beautiful place, home of the mountain ranges, beautiful snow skiing up there. This was in Kalispell and Whitefish, and then on to Missoula, Montana. Again, very well received, very open-minded. When you get into the rural areas, sometimes you just find these very devout people. And on campus, I took a walk in the morning in Missoula, Montana. There was a sign around an apple tree. And this was in the center of the school, the quad. And the quote read, "Even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree." And that was by Martin Luther, of all people. And I thought, isn't that beautiful? And it should be no surprise that the community supported the event as well. Then I was fortunate enough to head through Michigan on the train there. I actually went to Jacob's presentation of the history of the Chaldean Catholic Church there. Great job on that event, Jacob. Congratulations. Wonderful to see all the support in the community. And I ended up in Washington, D.C. At a church just a block from the White House, actually, right in the middle of the cherry blossom season. So I should probably say arigato and thank you to all our friends in Japan. We have today, I know friends from the French-speaking countries, both in Africa and France. Bonjour. Hola, we said that to our friends down in San Diego in the Spanish-speaking countries. For those of you who don't know, the greeting in Aramaic would be Shlam Lechon. And so grateful for everyone supporting us today. Within a week time, I spoke not only in the capital of the North, but the capital of the South. During the Civil War would have been Richmond, Virginia, and very well received. Talk about Southern hospitality. What a great group of people. Ready to hear about the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic in Richmond. In Richmond, they had what was called Monument Avenue, and almost all of them had been dismantled. But there was one there of a tennis player who went to UCLA, won Wimbledon from Richmond, a guy named Arthur Ashe. And I thought, wow, one of the last monuments on Monument Avenue was Arthur Ashe. I think my dad was at UCLA around the same time as Arthur Ashe. So, Dad, did you happen to know or see Arthur on campus? He said, Roy, Arthur was a student in my accounting class. Wow. No wonder he was so good at keeping score. So small world, but yeah, Richmond, beautiful place, very receptive to the Chaldeans. And then on to kind of one of the birthplaces in America for those that came over from England in Jamestown, Williamsburg, Virginia, a former capital of the South. So Washington, D.C., Richmond, and Williamsburg in a very short period of time, and all receptive people to Aramaic. Colonial Williamsburg, very beautiful, recommended for everybody. I went to a conference in Boston and then on to Canada. And Canada is the only country in the world where the Supreme Court proceeds in two languages. So this is a mindset difference because you're inherently bilingual. We have a lot of Spanish in California, as well as other languages and nationalities. But the Supreme Court in Canada is unique. And so a church in Ottawa said, gosh, we're interested in hearing about Aramaic and Chaldean. So this was the capital city of all of Canada, and very prestigious buildings, the State House, beautiful things there. prime minister lived in that area, and just a wonderful opportunity, which I was so grateful to be able to go to Canada's capital cities. Matter of fact, I went to 7 cities in Canada, and they were all receptive to this idea. Going through Calgary, ended up meeting with Father John. I was with my friend Rick from the Calgary church there, and we're talking, and Father John gave a wonderful presentation, but there's also the nuts and bolts of putting together a church. And Rick had been on the board, and it turned out he had spent a large amount of money, several million, on the structure of his church. And he started comparing notes with Father John, and Father John's was incredibly less, like maybe 2/3 of the price. And he said, Father John, how did you do that? And Father John said, well, a lot of my members are in the trades, and they help restructure and rebuild some of the church themselves. So very resourceful group, the Chaldeans. I continue to learn more about them. And again, Father John, congratulations, First Church in Calgary, and so grateful for your work there. Well done. After Calgary, hopped over, and the Canadian rail system is kind of a bucket list thing. If you've never been to Canada, you might see it by train. The major cities are along the rail stations, and it was beautiful. And I ended up making it to Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Bouchard Gardens are there, as is Wayside House, and kind of a full house, lots of kids, everyone, very interested in healing and learning about Aramaic, and the tie between the two. And of course, the Lord's Prayer is the prayer that meets all human needs. And when you go over it in Aramaic, the prayer really comes alive. It's a beautiful thing. As Father John pointed out, knowing the original language, I think it brings a deeper understanding to the prayer. In English, of course, it doesn't change, but the meaning runs deeper. And that can be helpful from time to time when you're trying to get certain concepts down. I was fortunate enough to be invited to speak in Spokane, Washington afterwards. This was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and is where I stayed. Beautiful place, right near a tragedy in the United States. So be able to support that community during their time of need was much appreciated. So that kind of wraps things up. I thank you all. My company website is www.letinthelightpublishing.com. My email is letinthelightpublishing@gmail.com. Again, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share with such esteemed colleagues. If you have questions about Tilkepe, Father Michael, I hope is able to log on, and we will probably have him field the questions. Of course, you can read the book, be in contact, or maybe if Jacob's still on, he can help answer some of the questions. Jacob is very familiar with the village. So with that, I will come back to you here, Christina, and thank you for all you're doing for the conference, Christina. You're greatly appreciated.
Of course, it's a pleasure of mine, and it's a true honor. And it's a passion of mine too, even though I haven't written anything yet, but who knows? Thank you for all that you've shared. Your passion for the Aramaic language and the Chaldean people is so commendable and so admirable. Speaking as a Chaldean myself, and I can't even claim to have the same passion you do. I love our culture, but the time and effort you've put into everything is it's amazing. So thank you. Thank you for documenting all that you have too. And reading your book, The Life of the Tilkapnaya, I would have thought you've been there, with how much information and all the pictures and just the details that you have there. I know you had some help, but it's great. It's amazing. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't been there, but I remember early on in Father Michael's class, he said, now everybody, under my pillow is soil in a pouch from Tilkepe. And so you just couldn't help but be drawn into, visiting the place, if your teacher is that involved in preserving his own community. So I feel like I was blessed to have such a wonderful guide along the way.
That's beautiful. I'm not sure if Father Michael Bazzi was going to be joining us. Mia, would you happen to know?
I have a comment to make, Roy. It seems like Father Michael called me. I missed a call from him. So I'm trying to call him back. I don't know if he's needs some instructions on. Do you want to give him a quick call, or He's not answering now that I'm answering. I'm calling him back.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can put him
he's just calling me. Okay, I'm gonna step aside for a second.
Okay, I can put him on
Okay.
speakerphone as well. Are there any questions for him specifically, or maybe he
Hi,
has some
Father Michael.
comments?
Let's see here. I'll let you know right now. I actually have a short and quick question for you, Roy, that came in.
Sure.
What inspired you to write? Like, was there a specific moment or an experience that set you on the path you're on, learning about the Aramaic language or writing about the culture itself? Like, was there a specific moment or turning point that maybe set you on this path?
Well, I think writing my first book was helpful because although it had to do with athletics, I realized if I didn't share some of the wisdom I had learned along the way, some of the traditions might be lost. So believe it or not, writing a book on athletics was helpful for me as an author to gain perspective on how important wisdom was. And it turns out Father Michael had coached as well. He didn't write a book on coaching volleyball, but he did mention that our perspectives were very similar, and he thought I would make a good publisher. And I think, it was one of those things, is having a full career in something else and looking back at it and saying, what can I give back? And the answer was write a book. And so as I got into the other fields where they were probably more significant globally in a historical perspective, I retained that perspective of how important it was not only to learn the lessons, but then to help other people to share the lessons I had learned.
Nice. I who would have thought, from a book on tennis or the thoughts of volleyball that would streamline right into writing a book about the Aramaic language or the Chaldean culture. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, it took a lot of courage because, as I've said before, none of my American professors knew that Aramaic was alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get into this subject, and then of course meeting the Chaldeans solidified that yes, it is alive, and taking all those courses. But actually, no one in American academia, my book called "Preserving the Chaldean Aramaic Language," nobody had written on that subject in America, in the history of American academia. And so I was kind of a pioneer. They call it building the airplane as you go, as you fly. You're just kind of winging it. But I had that confidence. I knew the importance of it. And I did not know at the time I was the first, but I did feel that it really needed to be done because, as I said, understanding the language, Greek is a Western culture, Latin Western. And when you impose one cultures and beliefs on another, the original culture can be lost, especially through language. And that's exactly what happened with Scripture, if you ask me. There's just much more to it. The basics are there, but it's like an onion. And as you start peeling the onion, it gets more interesting, stronger, more beautiful. And so what started off as kind of a passing interest has now turned into a career.
Wow. That's beautiful, really.
I have an update.
Oh, thank you, Weam.
Okay, so I sent him the link, and he's gonna see. Hopefully, it works out for him. If not, I told him the other option is to put him on speaker. It would be very nice though if we can get him on screen. So he is trying to do that right now.
Yeah, this is one of those things people don't understand. Fortunately, my parents were roughly the same generation and actually grew up in almost a similar village in Santa Paula, California. But what that generation has seen from basically growing up in a rural farm setting to this modern day high tech where everything is dictated by the computer is that these people are hanging in there and learning new things as they go and giving it all they've got every day in order to help and shepherd that next generation. I can only imagine what it's going to be for us in 40 or 50 years when there's some technological advance we're all trying to keep up with. So
we need an instruction booklet on that itself.
yeah. Well, that's why we honor the people that have come before us, is because
yes.
they are the guides. The medium may change, but the persistence, the challenge, the love of people stays the same.
I'm just checking to see if there are any other questions for you, Roy. Not to put you on the spot, but
Well, I'm gonna bring back your dad if it goes to Teotepe, because he's an expert on that area for sure. I have these people. Some of them have accomplished so much in such a short period of time. And just to notice, I mean, for most of these people, just realize English is their fourth or fifth language. And as well as we do in English, when we get into other areas, that's when these people can really shine, because they've had such full and rich lives.
I think Father Michael Bazzi is close to being on with us. So
I know he was excited to say hello and be part of the conference. So wonderful.
Okay, now I feel like I'm on the news channel, when something major happens, and then
you're going to update us all.
like the suspenseful situation. So I'm going to email him. So he's available. He's very interested to join us. He's suspense. He's the star.
So let's give him another couple of minutes. But if anybody wants to have on for conversation, I
have questions for everybody.
I'm just going to put a question out there. If anybody that's available,
Father Jwad, I know, or Jacob Bacall, or you, Roy. One of the things, first of all, love everything you guys are saying. It's really amazing. But my question is, we talk about the writing, and I know that this is the 4th annual, and we've had it at the Chaldean Cultural Center with hello. We've had it at the Chaldean Cultural Center at Shenandoah. We've had this event at Oakland University last year. We've had it at the Chaldean Foundation. And we're always encouraging writers to write the stories. And everything, I mean, Father Jwad, what you said about the Chaldean language, I'll ask you that personally later when we all connect, but this question goes out to everybody, and if you can help answer. What would you say for the Chaldeans regarding reading about their history? So say there are a lot of people, including many who connect with me, that are just readers, but I don't feel like we have enough readers. So I spend, I'm sure all of you see sometimes a paragraph can take weeks. We dedicate ourselves to this profession that really it's not for the sake of becoming rich. Let's just say that we're doing a service. Everybody has a service, even those who are becoming rich from it. And that's a blessing. That's God bless, But what would you say to the community to encourage them to read, or why they should read, and how we need their participation? Otherwise, we're like, we're writing to avoid. And as I mentioned earlier, my biggest encouragers and supporters were really Western, non-Chaldeans, who felt the urgency to write and document these stories. And that's why I get so happy when I'm connecting with other members who understand and value this. So I'd love your input on this, if you could, please. Thank you very much.
One thing that I would like to add is one of the hachimtha, one of the old sayings of back home, is a wise man, a loving man, will plant a tree even though he won't see in his lifetime the fruits of that tree. So if someone has such great love and passion for our culture, even though many times we work and we don't see the fruits of our labors, there are many, many different ways that even in the future, our work and everything that we write, everything that we try to preserve will be of great, great value. We might not see it. We might not experience that fruit in our own lifetime, or even in our lifetime, it might be people that we don't know or people that we are unaware of. But our work does have great purpose, and does have great fruits, does have great contribution to history, even if we don't see the fruits directly in front of our own eyes. But we should, as you said, we encourage more people to read, especially in this technological age that most people are focused on watching videos. And I think that's also something that we can do, is incorporate what we write into technology, into different platforms online, and putting everything to picture and putting a voice to it with all the technology that we have. And I know the Chaldean Cultural Center was doing that with the Catholic University by documenting all the visual and historical stories of pioneers. So I think all of that plays into the bigger picture, and trying to also tag along with our youth today, and at the same time encouraging people to read. And there are very many serious scholars who wish to find resources, and I think it's our duty to give them those resources.
Thank you so much. I mean, honestly, like, I'm very happy that there are individuals that are working and promoting this, and especially, like I said, regarding the language, because I'm not sure why sometimes it seems like it's dismissive, or maybe feels like there's not as much importance placed on it. So I hope that people understand, like, we're in a position right now, thank God, that when you were sharing your story about the funding that you received and how you received it, and I thought, yeah, this is when you know that you're doing God's work, when things are just coming really so easy for you. But I think this is for our community. We're fairly established to the point where we can afford to read and write, and this is another level. The priests that did what they did, if they did not write what they wrote, their stories would be lost. We would not be familiar. Plus, what pride we feel when we're reading. When I was reading about Ilyas and Musili, thinking that he's the first Middle Easterner to have taken such a trip, an amazing trip, it's the dedication and the strength and the courage and the faith that it took for him to do what he did, then you kind of feel like, hey, this is part of our Chaldean spirit. This is kind of like for hundreds and thousands of years, this exists inside of us. Then you see the same thing with Maria. Even as a woman, she took on a very strong role, didn't want to get married, wanted to continue passing on the faith. And even though she wasn't in a religious way, but actually she was, because wherever she went, she would share Jesus's gospel and things. And of course, Joseph Naim, what he went through for his faith, and then, making sure to ensure the safety of future Chaldeans. So it's important for people to read these. And now they're available. Most of them are available online for free. A lot of the more modern works, you can listen to it as an audiobook, but we need that kind of interaction. I think it's such a precious relationship to have that, and just really grateful for you guys' presence. But I don't know if Jacob, did you want to add to that? Thank you so much, Father Jawad.
A couple of good examples. Do you know the idea of having this Chaldeans in Canada moved here? Nobody had any clue at all about them being there and came here. Nobody. If it was not for our God rest his soul, Deacon Shamoun Sandavish, who wrote a very modest book in 1975, was published in Iraq, believe it or not. Nobody had, there was no printing or I would say publishing house that could print things in Arabic. And his first language was Arabic. English, he did okay, but he couldn't write in English. So he wrote a book in Arabic. He went to Iraq, published it, and he printed, I believe, to be 1,000 or 1,500 copies, shipped it to Basra, from Basra to New York to here. The book cost him almost $20 then. So the idea was, if it was not for him, that he had the interest and the joy of documenting events, such as that. How was the first church purchased? How, if it was not for him, I wouldn't have a picture of the church at all. Church has been demolished, and there was a highway built on top of it, so absolutely lost. I went to library in Detroit Library. There's nothing to show our first church. Second, you know about our club which is historical, and we have celebrated in 2018 75th anniversary of establishing of the first Chaldean Association, which is Chaldean Iraqi Association of Michigan. That was established in 1943. If it was not for him documenting the meetings and the first event and the first election, who was the president, how many people were elected, nobody would have any clue. I have served on all positions on the board. Nobody ever told me a story that else. He wrote it firsthand. He was elected as a member of the board, and he wrote extensive information. Modest writing, was not a writer, nor that I claim to be, but he put some important information, dates and events that took place that made history. Modest book, and it's in Arabic. So it was not for him. We wouldn't know the history of our club in 1943. If it was not for him, we wouldn't know the first two Chaldeans who came to Detroit, not the United States, in 1913. Within a matter of 2-3 days, they were interviewed, and then, then the Chaldean community grew slowly. If it was not for him, we wouldn't know. We had a community of over 33 families living in Fortham, Canada. We would never know. Credit goes to him. And it was not for him. We wouldn't know why they came to Michigan. Always, I have everything I have read, and I'm a good reader. I do read everything, and everything that my hands gets on. So everybody attribute the credit of Chaldeans being in Detroit, for being proximity to Canada. Well, we have proximity to Canada in Buffalo, New York. We have many other, and Buffalo, New York is not any different than Detroit. So, there was another Arabic community in Detroit. Well, there was larger community in New York. So that was not all, was the $5 a day. That was help, but was not the motivating, I would say, the actual, true motivator of the people to choose Detroit to live in. So with all that being said, it truly, if you don't write history, history will be lost. And it was not, as I mentioned, I give you 2 solid proofs. It was not for this man, I would never be able to write a book about this event, other than my own experience being maybe here and there and collecting a lot of scripts, collecting a lot of newspapers that has to do with my community. That I do myself. But that would be nothing compared to what he wrote historical when I was not around. I was not even here. I wasn't even born. So that makes I think so. Write in history, it truly, if you don't write, it will be lost. And among many other things, we might all take things for granted and think that will be recorded. Many of you remember the old Southfield Manor. Southfield Manor was a club, our first home of this association. Nobody had any picture images, not of the building, as the club name, nor do we have the construction, which took 2 years. Nobody has anything at all, nothing. So if you don't really document and write, it will be lost. That's why we have Library of Congress, and they welcome anything that could be historical, they welcome it, and they have great resources to store it. And among them, this is like StoryCorps. This is excellent example we could adopt ourselves for many people that will be gone in the next 10, 20 years. So that's to your point.
StoryCorps is a great avenue for other people to hear. I love hearing stories from StoryCorps myself, so I agree. This is also important.
So you realize why we have to record this. So I give you 2 solid examples. If it was not for this simple man, write those information, truly, I wouldn't be able to truly make sense of what I wrote about. Now we have a proof. We have names. We have dates. We have places. So all this help us to truly write the history.
Thank you. I think we have Father Michael that's able to join us now. Let's see if I can get this going. Hold on. All right, Father Michael, we have you on speakerphone. You want to try talking a little bit and see if we can hear you all?
Good morning, everybody. Shalom aloha, everybody. God bless you.
Can you guys hear Father Michael Bazzi? Okay, great. You can keep going, Father Michael.
I am so glad that you are working on things belongs to our nationality, and God bless you for that, and keep up always. Thank you.
So let's see, 1 second here.
Maybe Father Michael can share if there's been any updates in Tilkepe. The last time I talked to him, he said, well, Roy, they're starting to have a marathon there and they're teaching skateboarding. And I thought, what's next? So that was a few years ago. Can he speak to any events that have happened in the village of Tilkepe lately?
It is happening because of the, but always directed by Muslim people. There is no more even 50 people, Chaldeans there in the city. All are Muslims. And I'm not so much in contact. I receive sometimes emails from the known Muhammad. He sent me things, but not so much interested.
And did the marathon continue? I know it was a marathon for peace, and the slogan was "Peace is the path." Is that continuing at all?
I wish I could tell you anything I told you because I am not in contact with them.
And so in 2020, I think you wrote that there was something like 80 families, and in 2025 here, it sounds like there's less Chaldean Catholic families in Tilkepe?
They are almost the same average.
Okay.
People come back from the Hawk and the list of, they come back, some of them, just for their businesses, and they go back. There is nothing to go to say that they are more than what the amount was.
So you mentioned Hope. What about the other villages? Is Zacho or any of the other surrounding Batnaya? Have they recovered at all, or are they all in, do you know, similar situations?
Usually those who are in the Liskov and some of them in Al-Qosh, but mostly are in the Hawk. Majority are in the Hawk. And we don't hear much from them because you don't have people like yourself to be interested to give information for other people. They are not. They are just busy to survive.
Are there any from the Aliyah in the 1950s? I know that there were quite a few Jews also in that region, especially in Zacho. Is their presence still in the northern villages at all? Because they trace back to like Nebuchadnezzar. 500 BC. They were on the land that long. Are they mostly all back in Israel now? Do you know?
The question is, whatever is happening there, I'm not connected with. So I wish I could answer any question you have about that, but I don't have any connection with them. God bless them, and let's hope they will live peacefully.
Okay. Okay, Father Michael Bazzi. So I actually have a quick question for you myself, only because maybe it's just lack of knowledge on your background. When is the last time you were into Tilkepe yourself? Just curious.
1995.
Nice. Okay. Beautiful. Do you have any intention of ever going back there?
I am unable to ride the plane now because of my old age.
Okay. Okay.
It's the final question in the life of Tilkepe Naye, the one you just asked, Christina.
Is it really? Okay.
Yep.
Nice. It's a good question too,
Yeah, and I had a question for you and maybe for your family members. Has anybody gone back and visited? I was, as I mentioned, in Detroit, even in the last year, and people had gone and visited. Does anyone that you know, have they gone and visited recently?
Yes, they did. But my nephews and nieces and cousins from Detroit they went there, and some people from here also, they went there, and they corrected the problem with this in cemetery. So they built up another buildings for our deceased Bazzi's family. They did. That was last year.
I have a question, Christina.
Sure, go for it.
Father Bazzi شلام قال له وقال والقوة وعافية.
I'm sorry. I
Sorry, this is Jacob speaking. You want to repeat that again?
أبونا بزي شلام قال له الله والقوة وعافية.
شين الطوافة هم طالوا يعني بس.
My question is this. Father Bazzi, do you regret anything that you have not done, you should have done?
Usually, I wish I could be there and contact and to find out what's going on. There is nothing at all, but except like I told you, there is a man in Turkey, the known Muhammad. Whatever new things happen, he emails me. That's the only contact I have with Turkey.
But do you wish that you should have done something that you regret you did not do in Turkey or here in the United States?
I want you to know I did all my best. And the only thing I do, like I did this week, I take what I brought with me from Turkey, the dust and the rock and the writing from Turkey. I sleep on it. I put it under my pillow, and from time to time I open it, and I just feel Turkey.
God bless you.
Bless you too.
All right, that's beautiful. That's
You know,
for the soil next to you is so special.
Father John has interviewed Father Bazzi many times in the past, and he's a close friend of his as well. If I am not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Father John, he has given you his library as well, didn't he? So would you can you elaborate a little bit on that if you don't mind?
Yes, Father Michael is a very, very amazing priest. He, in the years that he served in Tilkepe, he almost headed a revolution, let's say, for the young people. He was the spearhead of a movement of youth being involved in church and being involved in the faith and being involved in the village. And to this day, many, many people, even after 50, 60 years of leaving Iraq, still remember the many, many amazing services that Father Michael Bazzi has given to them and has changed their lives. And he has helped me in every step of the way in my vocation. He has helped me with all the many books and things that he provides for me. And he truly is an inspiration for us young priests on how to truly give ourselves to the service of the people, to the service of the church, and also to the service of history, since he taught Aramaic at Cuyamaca College for many years. As Roy mentioned, how many books that he has written and published. He truly is an inspiration for all of us.
For 31 years, I was teaching in Cuyamaca College, the Aramaic. Thousands of people came, and I will tell you something happened. The other day, we had some Chaldeans, they went to Guadalupe, and in their way back to enter to America, one of the workers there, Mexican person, he said, Shalom Aleichem. And they looked at him and they said, who are you? He said, I took a course with Father Michael in Cuyamaca College.
Wow.
A Mexican guy.
So your works go very far.
Very interesting. There's a funny story I have to share with you. So in January of this year, I interviewed Father Bazzi regarding the book. And through my interview, I did ask him if he does not mind to share some of the historical images, pictures that he has with him from Turkey and the United States. He said, there is a very active Telkipnayo in Michigan. And he is, was it, no, the year was not this year, it was this January, the past January. Father John was not a priest then yet. So he said, do you know I Junior Jwad? I said, of course I do. He said, he has all the pictures that I have saved over the years. I gave it to him. So that he told me.
And a couple years ago, Father Michael came to Detroit, Michigan, and we had a beautiful conference, and it was almost a reunion of all his students over the years. We all gathered at a banquet hall, and we were over 700 people.
Yeah. And majority of them, they were my students. And one of them, just to let you know and make you happy, she was the one I gave her awards from Quran, and she took it to her teacher who she was discussing with them. The Sister Jwad said, how can you believe, you Christians, that Maryam Adra was virgin? And then the lady, today is a lady, she was a girl in high school with her friend. She told her, we are unable to answer you, but please come with us to Father Michael or let us go there. She said, go. And they came to me, and I took the Quran in their hand, and I let them read Surah Maryam. وقالت مريم وأرسل الله جبرائيل وقال يا مريم إني أبشرك بعيسى يولد منك. قالت كيف يكون ذلك وأنا لم يمسسني رجل. These two girls, they danced for joy. They said that will be the best thing, because the answer will be from their own Quran. And they took the Quran in their hand, they went back to the class, and they made joy to everybody. They told them, we will see what will happen to Sister Jwad. Sister Jwad came, and they gave her the Quran, and she started to become yellowish. One of the girls told her, Sister Jwad, do you know why you are yellowish? Not because Maryam Adra is a virgin, but because you are ignorant in your Quran. And guess what? In the meeting in Detroit, I told them, who is that girl? She stood up. She said, I was Father.
I think we cut off, but what Father Michael was trying to say was the many times that Christians were persecuted in the schools, and many times teachers would try to taunt the students about the Christian religion. And Father Michael was always very enthusiastic in giving the students resources to be able to defend themselves and to defend their faith in the school setting. And that's one of the many, many examples of how Father Michael was so instrumental in trying to keep the faith alive, the culture alive in a village that in many ways was declining. People were leaving, and many of the young people were uninterested in the faith or in the village culture. And Father Michael played a very pivotal role in trying to get them all together, united, and interested in the faith and in our culture, and to keep that going. And as I said, even years have passed, to this day, people who are 70, 80 remember their time in their youth when Father Michael played an instrumental role in their formation.
Well, thank you, Junior, and thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Father Michael. As we get speaking about the youth, I do want to remind everybody we're trying to be done by 10, and our last presenter has books geared toward the youth. So we're getting into her time frame here in this last 20 minutes. Christina, do you have any kind of words for us, or do you want to direct us on to our next presenter? I mean, this was wonderful to have everyone in coordination and in a group setting. Your lead here, Christina.
You know what? I second everything you said, Father Michael Bazzi. Thank you for all that you've done to preserve our culture, your ministry and all you've done to help us preserve all that we can here. So we are very grateful to
all of you. You bring joy to me, and keep up, please. Never stop.
Post Bislama.
Thank you, Father Michael. All right, I think
God
next.
bless you. And you know what? That American guy, Roy, he's doing more than Chaldeans for Chaldeans.
He really is. Thank you, Roy, and thank you, Father Michael.
I concur.
Do you know something about Roy? Just for 1 minute, please.
Please.
He went to Detroit, and he entered to the meeting area there, and he said the following: "Shlama Elohon, Tochen Shlama min Abuna Michael Bazzi." He said it in Chaldeans, and people started to applaud, and they loved him. And you know what he did? He challenged them. He said, "Tomorrow I will be able to teach Aramaic for your children. And if you bring them to me tomorrow, I will let them write their name in Aramaic." And they did. He took more than 70 of those kids. He told them their parents, they were around. And guess what? Those children, in 1 hour, he told them they could write their names in Aramaic. That is Roy.
Yeah, I was going to do the same. Wow.
I had a good Malpana. I don't know what to tell you. I had a good teacher. So
Yeah. Sorry about that. I think I want either myself or Weam will have to mute each time, but that takes us right into our next segment, which is Weam with her second portion of this conference. And I think you'll have to unmute yourself, Weam, but we're looking forward to hearing about, is it pomegranate that you're speaking about next, your work?
Yeah, I want to thank Roy. First of all, Roy, I think Father Bazzi is right. He's a
I am around. If you need me, just give me a call, please. I am in the church.
So what happened is, Roy, when we had the premiere in LA, I don't know, he was supposed to give a talk, I don't know where, because he's 24/7, and he came to the premiere, he changed his schedule, and he came to the premiere with his dad and his stepmom, and that was very special. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the support that you've given the Chaldean community. I think sometimes you work in a
You work on a low budget for your technology.
I think we're all on mute.
That contribute as well, Weam.
Yeah, Weam, you're on mute.
Am I on mute?
No, but when Weam's talking, I think we should be on mute. Sorry, Weam.
Okay.
that somebody of Armenian background shared with me. He said, in the age of globalization, how can we retain the depth and uniqueness of the cultural identity and language without reducing them to museum pieces? Thank you. I think that's an excellent question. And I think that with technology, and this is why we're here today, because this is recorded for people that are not able to attend today and watch this. It will be available whenever people want to watch it. Each one of our presenters is going to get their own segment that they can share, whether they want to share it as a whole or whether they want to share it as their segment. And what this does for our community is that it shows them a side to us that, in my opinion, I feel it's a little bit neglected. I do feel that we can do a lot better. I sense a big difference when I connect with other writers and readers. There's a lot of readers that have so much connection with me that when we talk, I make time for them because they inspire me so much more than they realize. They tell me I inspire them, but they inspire me because they're not looking for name recognition. They're not looking to write anything. They're just happy that our stories are being told. And so for that reason, what I had done is I want to just go over a few of the things that I have been doing. I went to film school in 2004 after being in a conference in British Columbia where two major producers told me why it would be hard to make my films. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to film school. So I was the only girl at MPI from 2004 to 2005. And after that, I did a short film that was about a Chaldean. It was a comedy. And then I tried another film that didn't work out because, and I was very busy. My kids were very young and I wanted to focus on that. And thank God that's the way I went. And I actually had to let go of opportunities and a script that I had at hand because it wasn't the right time until fast forward in 2016, I wrote Pomegranate. And that one came much more naturally. It won so many awards by Francis Coppola's Zoetrope for one. And then it has since won over 50 international awards. We are, for people who are in Michigan, we are screening it at the Imagine Theater in Royal Oak on Sunday, December 7th at 3 p.m. There's going to be a Q&A after. And I got to tell you, when I was in the theater in LA and sitting there listening to a family speak Surat, speak Chaldean, and it was a humorous scene, and then throughout the film, you know, one of the family, there's a Muslim family living across the street from a Chaldean family. And for that to be represented so that people can understand who are the Chaldeans. So to answer this person that asked this amazing question, in his case, he's talking about the Armenian cultural identity. Storytelling is very powerful. It's a peaceful way to share who we are. When we are just telling our stories and not trying to take anybody else's stories or not trying to put anybody else down, just to share authentic stories. And so, as I said, if you're in Michigan and you're interested, the tickets haven't even gone on sale yet. Actually, I think they start tomorrow. I also wrote a magical museum series because working at the museum for 5.5 years, where I was giving tours to all these students from different schools. It was so much fun because they were they had so many shenanigans. But I just love telling them information about our background that most did not know, including the fact that the first recorded writer in history is Enheduanna, a woman from ancient Mesopotamia. And I said, did any of you know that? Nope, we never heard of her. So I was so excited to be sharing that. And then I would see at Chaldean Moms of Metro Detroit, the Facebook page, teachers saying, we don't have any books about our history. So I started a series, and the one is, started with Mesopotamia Mania, Tower of Faith, Village Life. It's called Village Whispers, and then Baghdad and Beyond. And then there's more series to be coming out, because it's, how else are we going to share these stories, our history? And by the way, in my books, I use a lot of humor, because we all know that when we enter into a Middle Eastern home, Chaldean or not, there's so much love, there's so much humor, there's so much hospitality. And these are the things that it's important to bring forward, aside from the factual information that's out there. So really, I'm just grateful that, for the past, but we also are now living in a different environment. We're experiencing our own, a modern version of what it means to be Chaldean. What does it mean to be a Chaldean American? So if you can write your stories and share them. And what I found, there's a lot of different people that I follow or watch on YouTube. They have their own channels and they're amazing. There's this one Swedish woman that decided to go and live in the village of her ancestors, and she documents this. She's an amazing filmmaker. So, your film, your work, and she makes more probably that way than the way, that I did it, because so much had to be spent. But she's an amazing artist. And what I feel when I see these things, that we can do this kind of work ourselves, whatever your background community. You can document your stories through video, through podcast, through books, of course. But now with the way things are changing and more people are leaning towards technology, you can also just do it through your YouTube channel. We're all documenting this. I think it's an amazing, I feel like we should connect more often. We've said this before. I know I talked with Jacob about this when he was one of our speakers in the first Beth Nahrain conference. And we talked about this, that we need to keep that connection. I hope that we find a way that we can regularly connect so that we can inspire others to pursue similar interests, or at least read our writing and understand why it's important. And you know what? I think our writing is also very entertaining. It's not like, we're not trying to create like this atmosphere where we're in a school setting and, this is just, our writings, I think, are fun. I've read everybody's writing. I do need to read yours, Father Jwad, and I'm very interested and excited to do so. But I just love what you represent. So I know that whatever I'm going to read, I'm going to really enjoy it. That's really it. And I don't know if you guys, if we can open this up and have a dialogue amongst ourselves, if we have any questions. For me, you answered the question on how we can help others, be readers. And I think, Father Jwad, what I really liked is when you said that it really does start at home. You can only do so much, even in school. You can't force, the school can only do so much, the teachers, regarding your children's education. But there's so much more that has to happen inside the house as well. So, but anyway, if you guys are interested to have any kind of dialogue, and Christina, I'm so interested in having you be a presenter. You've kind of like piqued my interest on planning to write. I hope that you pursue.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see. I got to figure out what speaks to my heart on topic, and maybe this time I will ask my dad for help. I wanted to. Will you remind us of the date and time of your the movie you said it was showing in Royal Oak for our listeners?
So Pomegranate is gonna show for the first time in Michigan. Like I said, we did have a premiere in LA in February, but we're gonna have a community event on Sunday, December 7th at 3 p.m. at the Imagine Theater in Royal Oak.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And this is the first time we're announcing it, by the way. Like I said, the tickets, I think they go on sale tomorrow.
Okay.
And there will be, if you just, whether it's my page or we'll have like some things out.
Great. I know I look forward to it, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners do too. So.
Thank you.
By no means you are distributing any pomegranates at the event, are you?
Can you guys hear Jacob's question?
One more time, please.
I said, we are by no means, you are not distributing any pomegranates at the event, are you?
Oh, that's a great idea. We'll pass out pomegranates, but you can't cut them over because there'll be a big mess. They'll kick us out.
Two lines that I have learned over the years. Pomegranate, beside being the oldest fruit on earth, one of the oldest on earth, it's also to the Jewish faith. The pomegranate serves two purposes. One, it is symbol of unity because you have 750 to 1,200 bits under one roof. Second, it's a cleansing. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but that's what I have learned a long time ago, and I see it to be very precious to every Jewish family I have visited. I don't know why.
So Christina, next time I'm writing something, instead of like reading too much and looking things up, I'll just call your dad.
He has a lot to offer, I can tell you that.
I'll just cheat.
The pomegranate was a good idea, that's for sure.
It's funny because the name, I believe in this. I believe our names all, of course, have meanings associated with our mission and our calling. But the word, because it has such a biblical thing, and you're right with regards to the Hebrew name and it being the oldest fruit, and it actually is like such a blessing in so many ways.
I do
I
think
do
that
feel
it's
like
not
it's
only
something
30 years,
still being built.
but I do think some of the blessings, honestly, that people were able to kind of even relate to the title, which is this was not expected. I just think that there was
Because there was
something
something
for various
these
reasons,
reasons
but the attraction that it
that it
received, I
received, I
thought.
thought was kind of fascinating, and I do believe that there's that some kind of a blessing, biblical aspect to it that helps the
Well, it's
process.
symbolic, right? I mean, I think it is at least. So it represents a lot about the story itself. And I think it's perfectly
One
fit.
last
I don't know.
time.
I'm sure once everyone
The
sees
story goes one
the
last
film.
time. The apple that Eve ate in old, Mesopotamia was not apple, was pomegranate, because Iraq don't grow apples. They mostly well known for dates and pomegranates, or whatever that means. So they say.
You're right. You're absolutely right that it was an older fruit, and that later it was, and we know like stories over time change, and the fruit was actually even changed because it was thought to be a pomegranate that was in the Garden of Eden, and then later developed into an apple.
Well, there is so much mystery about the Bible, and the people claiming they don't know, and there's so many that the Chaldeans explain, and the apple pomegranate is one. But I did hear recently, and I am from Los Angeles, and my apologies to those near the Blue Jays, but it's also that baseball is mentioned in the very first sentence of the Bible, in the big inning.
Is he pulling our leg?
In the big inning.
Father John, can you reflect on that, please?
You're right. The word inning is there.
What baseball ever mentioned?
The word's in the beginning, but not inning.
Oh my gosh, that took me okay. That took me a minute.
Actually, we have a question here, Weam, for you really quick. And maybe to tie it all back in.
Yeah, the movie, by the way, even though it is showing, but it is available currently in 25 countries, streaming on various streaming platforms, including Amazon Prime, YouTube, Apple TV, and other streaming platforms. The distributor is Freestyle. Freestyle. So if you look them up, they'll have the link to all the possible the places where it's played. Freestyle digital media. Yeah, that's
Okay. Finally,
comedy, by the way. So again, like we have to drama because there has a drama in it too. But again, I think the importance is that
thank you.
I try to learn the land when I can. It's not easy to
invite everybody into your home. But I do feel like inviting people into your home through storytelling, through films, through
give them a sense of who we really are outside of the factual material.
material out there.
The visuals of pomegranate,
Going into a Chaldean home, going into your home's
I'm sure we've all done that, right, in our group. So we kind of share an honest, authentic way of our relationship with our neighbors.
neighbor, how it was with our neighbors. So yes, it was the persecution, oppression, genocide.
But I was born in Baghdad, and my best friend was a Muslim. And so I grew up in Baghdad,
environment. And so I have a lot of Muslim friends. At the same time, we need to be honest about some of the things. So just because I have Muslim friends doesn't mean that I can't be honest with some of the things that we're encountering. And Michigan is the perfect place to address these issues because it has the largest population of Chaldeans in the world, and it has the largest population of Arab Americans in the United States.
And so for me, dialogue, which still is
Stories
there was a lot of issues with regards to because of some of the material, which is, which happened. I found out with Godfather and all the great stories. So I'm not offended in any way, but I realized that that's when a subject feels like
it's true.
is really and we having gone through
and still living amongst the Muslim community in Iraq and now here, even more so than before. We need to address these things, and we just need to do it in a mature way. We can have these conversations. I just think God has given us this opportunity to come to this country to share some of this dialogue, and we should. That's my opinion. I think we need to share our stories.
We're no longer in a place where we feel like we shouldn't feel afraid. We shouldn't feel like held back in our
reason. I just think that we need to share our stories in a very respectful manner,
for the sake of other people's stories
that we shouldn't talk about.
Thank you, and thank you all. Christina, we're right at that time. Do you want to wrap things up here for us with a final statement or anything?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I just wanted to thank everyone for being part of this conference, the 4th annual, and looking forward to next year. It's a beautiful and inspiring conference, in my opinion, which celebrates, the richness of our heritage, our culture, the traditions, and literature all intertwined. And each of you here has participated and brought something meaningful to the table that reminds us that our stories are not forgotten, and it connects our generations and really keeps our culture alive, which is what this is all about. So a heartfelt thank you to Weam and Roy, who really helped to organize this event. And all of you who joined us from near and far, and even though it's not in person, your presence really made it more special. Those who submitted questions, and honestly, it's something I'm proud to be proud of, and I know all of you are too. And just wanted to thank everyone, and I hope everyone has a beautiful day. Anyone else has any closing remarks? Then.
Thank you so much, Christina. I just want to say that if anybody has ideas, we're very happy to collaborate for next year. This was initially Roy's idea, by the way, and he came to the Chaldean Cultural Center interested in it. And of course, I thought it was an amazing idea, so we pursued it. He's put a lot of work into it, but everybody here has contributed so much. So if you have ideas, if you have, even like if we do this more often in different environments, please feel free to reach out to either one of us, and even anybody who is listening to us. If you want to host a Beth Nahrain conference or any of our talks, we're very happy to hear from you.
Another thing, if you can post somehow, maybe in the YouTube link or whatever platforms we're using right now, which will take me to one other statement after this. If you can post how people can purchase, Roy's books, Jake's books, Father Michael Bazzi, get in touch with Father John about anything regarding this conference, that would be great. In case there's any questions.
Yes, please, everybody send me whatever you guys want to include next to your name. And
then lastly, I don't know if there's like some kind of like donation link per se. I know you have incurred some charges with this broadcasting this StreamYard, which is this platform we're using. If you feel called, if anyone out there feels called, I don't know if Roy, you want to speak a little bit any more on this, but just to cover your own costs, I don't know. I just thought I'd throw it out there, but.
Christina, happy to do our share and some. By all means, if there's anything you let us know, you put that before me.
Put on the spot.
Thanking you, Weam.
Jacob has always been very generous. First to volunteer.
You know, I have one comment to make. If we had maybe a little bit more chance to elaborate on specific, if you may have specific area that we need each to cover, besides just talking in general about things that we have, whether I wrote a book or Father John, right, and talking about his church. If there's any specific that you need us to emphasize on, that would be important. And it would be whether subject of the hot subject of that we need to touch on. People are talking about anything of being a hot news, and that we need to talk about or to elaborate on something that has happened in the community, and we need to share our reflection on. I think would be a good idea as well.
Okay, so you're willing to be controversial, Jacob?
No,
I have plenty of topics that I like to meet head on. If you like, we can have these conversations. It would be nice to have them more often. But there are some conversations, people contact me directly, and I don't know how everybody here feels, but they'll have very specific important topics. So they'll contact me directly, and while we talk about them over the phone or via chats or something, I do feel like it's more important for us to be in the community. And especially because the Middle Eastern thing sometimes is that there are some topics we shy away from. But this is an excellent thing to say, Jacob. I even wanted this to have a theme, but we thought, well, let's just wait a little bit. But if you guys have topics that you think are important, which I have already been contacted a lot about some of the topics about like how to preserve our ethnicity and how there's some kind of generation
discussions with Muslims and Christians. I've always found that these conversations are very healthy. So anybody
is willing to engage, we can connect individually about these things, and then we can create different podcasts about them.
Okay. I was specifically one question, and I would end my comment, which, it's been 3 hours. So one of the questions that I would raise, what's the future of Christians and specifically the Chaldeans in Iraq? Since 2003, over 20 years, we have seen our people have vanished from being 1.5 to 1.6, according to UNESCO records, and we are down to 123,000 Christian, not just Chaldean, all in. So that's a huge drop. Do we see a future for Christian in Iraq? Are we going to follow the same fate of the Jews when they were at one time prosperous, and for 2,000 years they were fixture in Iraq? Now there is no one at all, zero. So a question of such is very important for people to know and to learn about what makes things change so dramatically besides what we already know. The fall of Saddam, the American invasion, and what other things. It's important, I think, is a hot topic that something that of such should be on our maybe possibly next on fifth maybe anniversary of this event, like the Nahrain, possibly. I don't know.
Great suggestions. We can incorporate more topics, and maybe we do dive into those topics that our viewers may be interested in, that kind of take things into a little bit more detail. Okay, so
thank you guys. Appreciate it very much.
Wrap up here. Thank you to our viewers.
Thank you, everybody.
Speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.